Today we're going to cover the strongest low rank armor in Monster Hunter Wilds. This will cover everything through the entire story and the early stages of the endgame. Let's go! Before we get into these, I've done my absolute best to avoid spoilers here for you, but it is hard to talk about certain monster sets without talking about the monsters they come from. Everything is ordered based on when it appears in the game, and I'll give you a clear warning before we get into some of those later chapter monsters. Okay, good farming armor. There are two sets, and this is also relevant for high ranks as well. First is the leather set for botanist. Now, the reason you want this is because of that botanist skill. The leather set you get right at the start of the game, and the botanist skill will increase the quantity of herbs and other consumable items that you gather. So this includes fruits, nuts, seeds, and those consumable insects, mushrooms, etc. You'll essentially get an extra one. Now, this sounds not that valuable, but it kind of is, especially because in all the regions they have unique materials that you'll be able to farm, and having a set like this that increases the amount that you get will significantly reduce the time required to go and farm those resources if you do want to actually do that, which you probably should, because obviously food is valuable here, but also just being able to make traps and other items from all of these collectibles. The other side of the coin as well is the geologist skill, which is for bone piles and those mining outcrops, which is from the chainmail set that you get right at the start of the game as well. Now, the exact same reason that the other set is beneficial, this one's even more beneficial, because bones and those mining outcrops will actually allow you to create weapons and armor, specifically mostly weapons as well, from those pickups, and the late game ones are very hard to get. And because with every item that you get an extra one, if you find one of those really rare pickups like say firestones or dragonstones, etc., you'll get an extra one just off the bat, so you're getting two for the price of one. This is also true once you get into the high ranks as well, because the materials then will actually be relevant for those high ranks, and you'll be able to craft some of that high rank stuff as well. Now, as well, there are actually high rank versions of both of these sets if you wanted to make them once you get to the end game and do a bit more farming that way with actually still maintaining some of those resistances. There is also a botany and a geology charm that you can craft as well if you just want to get a little bit of extra resources from them. The absolute best low rank set that'll probably take you through basically all of low rank is actually the Arcane set, and it mostly is because of the part breaker skill. What this does, it makes it easier to break large monster parts, which will allow you to break those parts off, and then you can carve them to get those extra resources, but it also increases the damage dealt when destroying a wound through a focus strike. Now, realistically here, you only need the helm, the chest, and the boots, so you can get the 3 parts of part breaker. Now, it's really beneficial for that resource farming, because there is quite a lot of sets that have these really rare parts that you'll need to say knock off a tail and carve that tail, or carve the monster at the end of a fight. Then it's going to have like, let's say a 5%, 3%, whatever chance of that dropping just from those carvings, increasing your chances of being able to knock those parts off. Obviously, it helps when you're actually fighting the monster as well to prevent them from doing attacks, but it also is beneficial for getting those materials, and then you're getting that additional damage from the wounds anyway, and wounds are like the best resource to not only get materials but also deal damage to monsters consistently. So this set also unlocks pretty early in chapter 2 as well. It's not particularly hard to get, and the monster that you have to beat isn't that hard. I would recommend a water weapon. It will definitely make those fights go a little bit easier. The helm was the only part that I struggled with because it needs to get marrow, which has such a low drop rate, exactly how I was talking about the drop rates here. You need to knock off that tail, give you an extra chance of potentially getting the drop, but it does. That's actually really consistent with all of these sets, also in the higher rank as well, that there's going to be like one part of the set that requires a drop that has like a 5% or less percentage chance of dropping, and it just takes you a little bit of a grind to get. That's always the Monster Hunter way, but this set increases your chances of actually getting those drops and also just dealing more damage to the monsters. You could also consider changing out the gloves and the belt for this set for some other skills, because you don't need them. Like, you could say drop it for some of the sets that we're talking about a little bit later in this video. I did want to touch on like a good stamina set as well, because there are weapons like the bow that are very stamina hungry, and there are some sets that are really beneficial for that. Like, one of the early ones is the bone set for the marathon runner skill. So it slows down the stamina depletion for actions that continuously drain stamina, things like dashing, but also things like using the bow. There are other sets that do similar things. Like, there's one set a little bit later in the story that will have stamina surge that speeds up stamina recovery in general. So you could rock, say, the marathon runner set, and then say rock like the Zuu set for stamina surge, something like that as an alternative. But if you are struggling with stamina, that's a good option to run if you're running using, say, like a bow build, or just generally doing a lot of dashing at melee or in ranged combat. Before we get into the next sets, I want to talk about some build tips that you should absolutely know. Wishlisting stuff is so valuable to do for a number of reasons. When you're looking at the monsters that you want to actually go and fight to get these materials, you'll have a specific pin next to the material that you look for, as well as when that material drops, you'll get a unique pop-up in the right-hand corner that says that that item dropped, so you can make sure you don't actually miss it. The best weapons to combo with the stuff we're talking about here, I'm probably going to work on a separate video for weapons specifically in the early game once I've tested every single weapon type and everything. But ultimately here, it's just like whatever you vibe with, right? There's no real wrong answer with weapons. I think it's just your own play style, whether you want to play fast or slow or from range. Anything can be kind of strong. Though I will say that the fire element is really good in the second half of the story. Like basically once you get out of the fire area, almost every enemy is like weak to fire. It just absolutely rules. Also, upgrade your armor with the armor spheres once you have unlocked this feature, except don't go nuts and use all your spheres in the early game, because you will unlock more sets that are significantly better than the early game sets. Obviously, once you get to high rank as well, you want some of those spheres to upgrade that gear too. Now, don't forget about charms and talismans, because you can equip a charm that has a skill on it that will then complement the skills that you've got on your weapons and armor as well. There are certain ones like Foray, for example, that has a skill that is more than what I've got just from the general set. So having it on my charm as well will then further benefit from that as well. Decorations are something that you'll get like later in the story, and they won't really become a factor until high rank gear, but you will have a couple of decoration slots in the low rank that you can tinker with. Really what I would try and do for low rank specifically is a lot of armor will have a weakness that they're significantly weak to, right? So if you're wearing fire armor, it's gonna be weak to water. Try and fill those decoration slots with, say, water resistance, just to bump that up a little bit so you're not significantly hindered by wearing certain armor in the early stages of the game, where realistically in the early stages of the game, it's really just about your resistances and trying to survive as much as you can. So don't stress too much about that. All right, we're going to talk about the best sets for low rank now, like probably the absolute best ones. This is basically from chapter 3 onwards. So if you're not up to that point, then maybe come back to this section of the video once you have, or if you don't care, then let's roll with it. We're going to start with the weakness exploit set, which is fantastic for that fire damage that we were talking about earlier. This comes from the Guardian Rathalis set. Now, the weakness exploit skills, it increases your affinity of attacks that exploit a monster's weak points and wounds. Again, wounds obviously fantastic, but also that affinity, because you want to make sure that you're matching that specific elemental type with the monster that you're fighting. Now, this set is great specifically for fire damage, because when you're wearing the full set, it comes with Scorcher too as well. That increases additional fire damage after landing an attack. So if you're fighting monsters that are weak to fire, this set's like absolutely perfect. It does work with other weaknesses as well, and this set does become available pretty early in chapter 3. Also, if you like what we do here, consider hitting that like button or subscribing, or the membership program. For just $1, you can get early access to videos like this and all of my other guides, build videos, and those cheeky long form essays we do. Plus, there are other benefits like members only channels in the Discord, merch, and more. So if you like what we do here, please consider hitting that join button or subscribing, as it helps me more than you know. But enough of that, back to the video. Now again here, the helm is the hardest part to get, because you need that specific Rathalis plate, which will take you forever to get to drop like it did for me. So make sure you are severing that tail and carving it like we were talking about earlier. The Ebony set is fantastic because of the burst skill. So the burst skill, continuously landing hits, gradually increases attack and elemental attack. Now, the more stacks of this you have, the bigger that stat boost is. But also on first hit of a monster, you gain a small temporary attack and elemental boost as well. So essentially here, like I can see, say for example, if you're running a set that you don't need, let's say, a helmet for that set, you could just say equip this specific helmet just to get that first level of this skill, so you get that on that first hit bonus. But then obviously the higher sets of this are significantly beneficial as well. But if you're wearing the full set, you also get the burst boost 2 to further extend the duration of the burst skill and grant attack plus 10 while burst is active. You will see when this is active, because it will indicate on the right hand side. This set is definitely better for faster weapons that are hitting multiple times. Say things like the dual swords, even the long sword is pretty good here, but wouldn't be using this with some of the slower weapons in the game, because you want to be triggering that like 5 successive hits as much as possible and as fast as possible, so you can try and constantly get that stat bonus that you do get from using this. Now, this set is a bit later in chapter 3. It's not too hard of an encounter. It is weak to water as well, but it does appear later in chapter 3. Now, this last one is probably the best set in low rank overall, but there are obviously the other options that we've talked about. Now, that's the Arc Vault set because of Flare, so it makes it easier to inflict wounds. Upon inflicting enough damage, also deal additional non-elemental. I like this set for a number of reasons. If you're dealing non-elemental damage to enemies, this set is fantastic because of the additional damage it does. Making it easier to inflict wounds obviously is fantastic. We know why that's important, but also when you're wearing this full set, you get Decimator 2 to restore health when destroying a wound on a large monster. The reason this set is great to take it into high rank is because when you're using a lot of that low rank gear and those harder monsters start hitting very hard, when you're breaking all of those wounds, getting a little bit of chip health back when you're fighting these harder monsters is just fantastic. Now, Flare also can have additional levels compared to the ones you get just from having the set equipped. So you can use a charm here like I have to get you that 4th tier. And then if you wanted to, you could switch out like the belt and the boots to one of the other sets that we've talked about in this video. But just be mindful, you'll lose that restorative health benefit, but there are other benefits you can get, say if you're dropping one of those to grab like burst or even weakness exploit or any of the others that we've talked about in this video. There's plenty of great skills as well. Now, this set comes right at the end of chapter 3, so you will take a while to unlock this one. It's not something I would be absolutely gunning for immediately. I'd probably pick one of the sets earlier in this video and use that one specifically, like the Part Breaker skill from the Argyricane set that we were talking about. But let me know any sets and skills I have missed in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.